Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special shiur and a lecture tonight. Klal Yisrael has certainly been through a very difficult period the last week since Lag BaOmer Thursday in Eretz Yisrael. And the pain and the emotions are still very raw and very real. We thought perhaps that as time would go on, it would dissipate a little bit. But as new information and new revelations come through in the news and in chats and in messages every single day, the pain continues to be raw, continues to be emotional for all of us. I just found out within the last 24 hours that one of the names of the boys that's 13 years old that I was staring at, I don't know why it didn't register in my mind, but it is the child of an old friend of mine that I haven't seen in years, who's been living in Eretz Yisrael for about the last 7 years. And today, another acquaintance of mine let me know that his brother-in-law, who's the father of 8 children, ranging from the ages of 1 and 19 years old, was also one of the tzaddikim, one of these righteous people that was taken in the tragedy last week in MERON. And I'd like to try to present this evening a perspective which is not what we will find per se on the news. It's not the ideas that are circulating around on many different shiurim and everything that people are finding right now. I'd like to present something which is not my own. I don't claim to be an authority on Torah thought, on perspective. I'm far from being what is called a das Torah and someone with understanding and the wisdom to be able to present a Torah perspective. However, based on everything I've learned over the years from my own Rebbeim, who have walked me through many of the tragedies of Klal Yisrael, and through our learning that we call from our sources, from the Torah itself, from Tanakh, from our Chazal and the Gemara and the Midrashim, from our Rishonim, from our very great earlier leaders and commentators, then perhaps with Siyata D'Shemaya we'll be able to develop an idea, to be able to see things in a way that we haven't seen things up until this point, that we should understand what is the message, at least as best as we can, what is the message, what is our call of duty during these days? For the events to transpire, for the funerals to take place, for the hundreds if not thousands of lives that have been changed instantaneously over the last week, even less of a week, for that to happen in our nation, in our history at this point, and not to change or to grow or to make amends for ourselves through it all, then an opportunity of this nature and of this stature would surely be wasted at this point. So we'll work together through the sugya, through the understanding. We'll see the words of our sages. We'll try to understand the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running things the best that we can. And we will together work on developing an outlook and a perspective, the way that a Jew looks at these tragic moments in life. One of the levayas which took place in Eretz Yisrael on Sunday was for a young yeshiva bacher who was learning in the Mir Yeshiva in Yerushalayim. And it was in the middle of the night, almost in Jerusalem. It was dark. You could see on the cameras that were videoing, it was dark at night. I think it was about 11:30 in the evening. They were waiting, it looks like, for the family to arrive from America. And as the coffin was drawn out in front of the hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of young men and women that were there for the levaya, so one of the Rosh Yeshivas, Rav Yitzchak Ezrachi, got up to speak. And although he was screaming the following words with passion and with emotion, it was hard to hear what he was saying because the wailing that was going on amongst friends and family that was standing there was piercing the darkness of that night. And Rabbi Zrachi kept quoting the same pasuk, the same verse over and over and over again. It's a verse in Tehillim in the Psalms. We say it every Friday night on Leil Shabbos in Shul. Perhaps this Friday night when we stand together and we say these words, we'll think a little differently what David HaMelech is trying to teach us. And David says, Ma godlu ma'asecha Hashem. How great are your acts, Hashem. Ma'oid omku machshavaisecha. Very deep are your machshavos, are your thoughts. Ishbar lo yeda. An ignorant person does not know this. Uksil lo yovin ezois. And a foolish person will not understand this. What will the fool and the ignorant one not know and understand? They will not know that Magadlu Masecha Hashem. How great and how awesome and almighty are your actions, Ribono Shel Olam. And you should know that behind every single act that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does, every event which transpires in a person's life, and certainly when it happens on a global path the way that it did last week, it's ma'oid omku machshavaisecha, your thoughts, your cheshbonos, the details that go into enacting any single thing is very, very deep indeed. And Rabbi Zrachi was screaming these words with such passion and such emotion and tears as you hear the wailing in the background of the Bachrim who lost one of their dear friends. And he was giving over a message that we are all in this world, we are ba'arim, we are ignorant. We are all ksilim, we are all foolish, and it is impossible that the mind, this finite mind that we have, is going to be able to grasp the messages and the thoughts and the deeds of Hashem, because they are great and they are vast and they are omniscient. And they are so umku, they are so deep. Deeper than anybody could ever see and understand. Says the Radak on these words, Keshani misbeinen behem, David HaMelech, who lived a life of tragedy, a life of hardship, a life of disappointments, a life of frustration, a life of sickness, a life of being chased down by his enemies, by his own children in his house. A person who was accused unjustly in the eyes of the nation of making major mistakes. Enemies surrounding him in the wilderness, chasing him into a cave, fighting for his dear life. There's nobody in history that knew how difficult and tragic a life could be. And yet through it all, no matter what was going on around him, David HaMelech sings a shir chadash, he sings new songs. He praises the Ribono Shel Olam, and he says, HaKadosh Baruch, I'm going to grow from the situations that you put me through in life. And he says the following words, Keshani misbeinen behem, when I begin to delve in to the wondrous works of Hashem, ani makir, I recognize ki gedolim heim, they are gigantic. And they're impossible for me to comprehend completely. So too, how deep are the thoughts of the Ribono Shel Olam. It is not revealed to the wisest of men the reasons that things are happening in this world. With the difficult questions that arise in the events that are spread before us in this world. Why did it happen this way? And it didn't happen that way. Says David HaMelech, a person wants to look at difficulties and they want to sit here and try to figure out how it happened, why it happened. How could it be in MERON on the Yortzeit of Shimon Bar Yochai? How could it be that such a tragedy? And it was now all the news stations, it was the policemen, it was the this, it was the that, it was they shoved them into this place, the stairs were slippery. Says David HaMelech, and then you're missing the point. The point is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a cheshbon, he has a plan. He has a calculated way in which he runs this world. And guess what? In that realm of reality, every single one of us is a ba'ar. We are ignorant, and we are ksil, we are foolish, and we simply cannot understand the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. But says David HaMelech, that's okay. Because that's the way that Hashem made this universe. You can't fathom the omniscient being HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You can't understand why he does, how he does, when he does. People will come up with gematrias, numerical calculations of the day of the year that it was, and how old this person was, and where they were standing, and when they were standing. Says David HaMelech, you can't. You will not understand. And a person that will go into this world of trying to understand the tragedy of MERON and think we're going to come to a conclusion, will figure out why HaKadosh Baruch Hu did what he did. Says King David, impossible. Let's start over there. We're not here tonight to try to figure out what is the message that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to give to us. What is the cry, the call in the middle of the night that is supposed to reverberate in the ears and the hearts of every single Jew? How should we go through this tragedy? What does Hashem want us to learn? Because nobody is Hashem. And nobody could actually know. Only HaKadosh Baruch himself is privy to the emes, to the truth. Many, many years ago, the Ramban, the great and the holy Ramban, he had a student who was on his deathbed. And the Ramban came to visit him and he said, listen, you're not going to be in this world for so much longer. I need you to do me a favor. He said, everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does in the world, I understand why he does, how he does. It all makes sense. There are three things that HaKadosh Baruch has done to the Jewish people that I simply cannot understand. I'm going to write them down on a letter to Hashem. I'm going to bury that in the grave together with you. And I want you to go before the Kisei HaKavod, the throne of glory, and present this letter to the Ribbono Shel Olam and ask him for the answers to my questions. And then come back to me in a dream and tell me what the answers are. Well, sure enough, the Talmud, the student, died a few days later. And the Ramban came with his letter and he dropped it into the cave, to the grave, as he was being buried. And a few days into the Shiva, the Ramban has a dream one night and his beloved student appears to him. And the Ramban is looking at him and he sees that he is shining, he is glowing. There's a radiance and a kedusha surrounding his very being. And the Ramban says, "Nu, tell me, what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu answer? What are the answers to my questions?" So the student looked at his Rebbe and he says, my great teacher and master, I do not have permission to tell you the answers to your questions. Those are only privy to those of us that are in this world of truth where we can see. But trust me, when you will come here after 120 years and you will see things the way that I see it, you won't have any questions anymore either. For everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing is with a cheshbon, with a plan. Everything works out exactly perfect, the way that it should be. Magadlu ma'asecha Hashem, how wondrous, how awesome and how gigantic are your actions. How could HaKadosh Baruch Hu be anyone besides Hashem? There are 100,000 people that are dancing in MERON, and it's been like that for year after year after year. And not a single person has ever been hurt. And on this 1 year, the excitement, the enthralling feelings of Klal Yisrael coming back to MERON. Last year, this time of the year, COVID shut down. They barely had 1 million there. And so many people came rushing with excitement, looking forward to it. Magodlu Maasecha Hashem, how awesome and big and lofty are your deeds that you handpicked, you plucked out of your vineyard over there, 45 Kedoshim, holy souls. Can anybody understand why this one and not that one? Why these two brothers and not those two brothers? Why this father and not that father? Why this Zayda and not that Zayda? Can anyone understand? Nobody can understand. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, the master of the universe, who is running everything with his overseeing vision and understanding. Only the Ribono Shel Olam is able to understand why he does what he does. But these questions of why, a human being trying to know, we are very curious beings. The more that we know, the more we feel we have some control over the situation. We feel a little bit better over the way that things worked out if we could understand. If we'll be able to explain the mishaps which took place with the security and the police, and that's why it happened, we'll feel a little bit better about ourselves. Okay, it's in the hands of man. Next year, they'll be more careful. They'll close off that entrance, that rampway over there, or they'll put in a new staircase. But the amku machshavaisecha, the deepness in the machshavos and the thoughts of Hashem, it's beyond the police. It's beyond the staircase. It's beyond the fact that there were tens of thousands of people pressed in with their bodies against each other, much farther beyond that. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is very deep in this world. And he has plans that he is always having in motion constantly. We are not the first ones to be bothered by these questions, nor will we be the last. But if we go back to the Chumash and we look at Moshe Rabbeinu, Mi Gadol Mi Moshe, who is greater than Moshe, was the greatest prophet of all time. He spoke panim el panim, face to face with Hashem. And he witnessed the Jewish people dancing around the golden calf. He broke the luchais, the tablets. They had to take the calf, grind it up, put it into the water. They gave the people the drink, and many people died on the spot. And Hashem said, I am so tired of this nation. They're so aggravating to me, complaining. They don't believe in me. I just took them out of Mitzrayim. I'm going to get rid of them. And Moshe begged Hashem, please Hashem, don't destroy Klal Yisrael. There's so much potential inside every single Jew. Let them live, please. Let the world see that you are compassionate and yet you are merciful. Don't wipe us out in the wilderness. And Moshe was successful in his prayers. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu overlooked the sins of the Jewish people and he decided to let them live and thrive. And so Moshe Rabbeinu, in a very close moment with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, decides to ask another question. And he asks Hashem, Hareini noes chvodecha, please Hashem, show me your glory. I want to know, the Gemara writes, and the Midrash says about this verse, I want to know tzaddik v'raloi. Why do I look around the world and I see sometimes the most righteous of men are suffering? V'rasha v'toivloi, and I look around the world and I see the most wicked individuals are prospering and they are succeeding in this world. Hashem, show me your honor, show me your glory, show me your thought process. How do you do? Why do you do? What goes on? How you make things work the way that they do? Because I cannot understand. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu, Lo yisucho lirois es panai ki lo yirani ha'adam b'chai. You are not able to see my panai, my face. For nobody can see me and survive and live, says Hashem. Panai, which means face, is the language of panim, which means the inner essence. Says the Ribbono Shel Olam, nobody could see my inner essence. Nobody could get that close to me and survive and live, because if you would be that close, you would be within the realm of the Shekhinah, your neshama, your body, whatever you are, you would burn up on the spot. You cannot handle the intensity of my being. So my face, says the Ribbono Shel Olam, you cannot see. Understand my panemius, my inner workings, how I decide what I decide. Nobody could understand. However, he writes, but my back, that you could see. But my face, the front, you will not. Says the Chassam Sofer on these words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling Moshe Rabbeinu that as long as a person is in this world, what you see panai in front of you, when you see tragedies of the proportion that we witnessed last week, when you see families that are torn asunder because of the loss of life, so many mothers right now will raise their children on their own. So many fathers will have to go on Friday night as they're blessing their children and always know that one is missing. So many people gave levayas and espedim, and they said the most beautiful, beautiful words about these neshamas that left the world. Why, says Hashem? You can't see head on. You cannot see in this world. But when it's behind you, meaning either after you will go through this situation, sometimes in this world, you'll be privy to see why something happened. But suffice to say that achorai, behind you, meaning after this entire world is behind you. When you'll be in that place, like the student of the Ramban who said, I'm privy to see the ways of Hashem because I'm in the world of truth. I'm no longer confined or confounded by the physicality of this world. The mechitzas, the veneer, the barriers that don't allow us to see the truth, they're gone at that point. Me'achorai, behind you, says Hashem, then you'll be able to see. But here in this world, impossible. Even you, Moshe Rabbeinu, who I love so much and I care about so much, and we speak face to face, you know there's more than anything, anybody else about me. But even you can't handle that revelation, because that revelation is me. And nobody can be me besides myself, says Hashem. The Rambam, Maimonides, writes in his Sefer Moreh Nevuchim the following words: Darchei Ashkacha Nistaros. The ways of Hashem's providence in this world are nistaros, they are hidden. Kishem shenanachnu mevinem esidrei teva nifloim. Just like we don't truly understand the order of this physical world and the incredible creation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has made, even with all of the scientific studies that we have in the world, even with all of the technological advances that we have, with all of the wisdom that we have accrued over the generations, still scientists will admit there's holes in their knowledge, in their wisdom. We're now just beginning to pierce the heavens into the universe to go explore the solar system. They come out with one study 1 year, caffeine, the worst thing in the world for you. 6 months later, caffeine, best thing in the world for you. Soy, never drink it, it causes horrible diseases. 8 months later, soy, it's a wonder drug. You have to make sure you drink it every single day, 2 glasses at least. We cannot, just as says the Rambam, we cannot understand fully the mystery of this universe, of the physical natural world. We certainly cannot reach the way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Mashiach watches over the world. And the true shape and form of the way that Hashem presides over creation. Because the thoughts of Hashem are not like our thoughts. And his ashkacha, his divine providence, is not the way in which we see things. We're one-dimensional. We are finite beings. We can see what's in front of us a little bit beyond. You'll ask Siri for something that's going on in the world. You'll find a little bit, but you can't see it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hashgacha, the way that he watches over the world, is constant, every place, everywhere. Haya, he was, he is, and he always will be. The whole world is revealed in front of him right now. There's creation, there's the birth of Avram Avinu, and there's the death of these 45 Kedoshim at MERON. It's all in front of Hashem at one time. Says the Rambam, when a person knows and understands this to be the reality, that we simply cannot fathom the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, because he's totally different than us. Yakilu hayisurim be'einav, the suffering and the tragedy that a person will go through in their life becomes easier to bear, v'yikableim be'ava, and we will accept them lovingly. When we put our amunah, our faith in Hashem, and we realize that everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is with a plan, there is a purpose. Nothing is doubtful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when he brings it into fruition. Remember, my wife and I once were traveling to New York for a chasana, for a wedding. And our son, Naftali, was only about 6 months old at the time, maybe even younger. And we left Los Angeles and he was in the stroller. We got onto the plane, and he was in my wife's arm, he was in a car seat. We got into the airport in New York, we rented a car, he's in the back seat, he's in a car seat, he's looking at my wife. We go to the hotel room, he's back in the stroll over there in a bassinet. He's crying, he asks the nurse, whatever he needs, he just keeps looking at my wife's face. For the 36 hours that we were gone, he's looking at my wife's face. We went to the chasana, he's in the stroller, he's looking up at my wife. We come home late at night, he's looking at my wife. We go back into the airport, into the airplane. The whole journey, he's looking at my wife the entire time. So when we got back to Los Angeles, we said to ourselves the following: this boy has no idea where he was the last 36 hours of his life. But one thing he is certain of, he was in his mother's loving view and glance and embrace the entire time. And he felt secure, and he felt loved, and he felt comforted knowing that his mother loves him. She kisses him, she coddles him, she hugs him, she embraces him. It doesn't matter, he's in Los Angeles, he's in JFK, he's in a taxi cab, he's on an airplane. He's with his mommy. Says the Rambam, if you'll recognize and you'll realize that we are like that little child who wherever we travel in life, we are with our mommy, we're with our Tati in Shemayim, our Father in heaven. Then no matter where you go, no matter what is going to take place, no matter what tragedies will occur, Rachmana litzlan lo aleinu, we just have to look up and we see that our Father in heaven is looking down upon us, and he knows exactly what he is doing. And he would never try to harm us. He would never try to hurt us. He doesn't make any mistakes. Everything is calculated with a cheshbon, with a master plan. Says the Rambam, when you realize that, all the suffering that you will go through in your life, all the difficulties, all of the challenges, they're so much easier to bear. V'yikablem be'ahava, and a person will accept them with love. Many years ago, a dear friend of mine, he and his wife were expecting their first child. You can imagine the excitement. His wife was already in the 9th month. That's already the countdown when a person's getting ready to welcome a life into their house. And my wife was together with the woman one day, and she looked at her and she didn't like the way that she was carrying the baby. And she said, "Are you feeling okay?" And she said, "No, actually, I'm not feeling 100%. She said, I don't like the way that it looks like you're carrying the baby. I think you should go to the doctor. I think you should go get checked up." And so the woman rushed off to her OBGYN. And the doctor took one look at her, felt around a little bit, and he said, "Go to the hospital immediately. We're having a C-section right now." And she got to the hospital, and within moments, she was whisked away into the operating room for an emergency C-section. She had some toxemia, something of that nature. And unfortunately, this little baby girl was born brain dead. And the baby fought for its life for about 3 weeks, I believe. And then she passed away. And who could imagine the devastation of this couple? About a week later, they were driving their car someplace. And suddenly they start hearing noise. And they pull over and they have to call AAA, and they get pulled into the mechanic shop. And he says to you, "Listen, I don't know what to tell you, but something's unusual about your engine over here. Engine is shot." It wasn't even such an old car. He said, "You're better off getting yourself a new car. The amount of money that it's going to take to fix this engine is not worth it." Then a few days later, they're working on the computer. The computer just turns off like that. They take it to the shop, and the guy says, "Computer, it's dead. It's not worth fixing. Get yourself a new one." So the husband and the wife, they start looking at each other. What's going on in our lives? First we lose a child. Then the car unusually dies. Then we have to get a brand new car. The computer dies. What's going on over here? Why is Hashem doing this to us? So they went to our Rebbe, Reb Tzvi Berkowitz in Ner Yisrael. And Reb Berkowitz was very well aware. He was very much involved in the death and the passing of their daughter. And my friend said, "Why, Rebbe? Why are all these things happening? Loss of a child, the car mysteriously breaks down and dies, the computer dies. Why?" So Berkowitz looked at this young man who was grappling and struggling with the suffering of life, and he said, "The question is not why. The question is what? Why HaKadosh Baruch Hu does what he does, why you have all of these tragedies in your life right now, why you're suffering the way that you are. Magadlu Maasecha Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu's actions are too big for us to understand. But you could ask, what does Hashem want me to do? Because whenever a person will go through tragedies, and whenever a person will find themselves in situations that are difficult to handle, you look at it as HaKadosh Baruch Hu calling upon you, his mission call to you to ask you, step up and come and do something. Make yourself better. Look inside of yourself and see, what could you do? Don't try to understand why. That you will not. We leave that to Hashem. But if there are hardships and there are difficulties, it's not for naught. Rather, it must be because HaKadosh Baruch Hu would like us to be able to become a person who thinks more about the meaning of our lives. And he wants us to raise ourselves up to a new level. Strengthen our emunah, strengthen our mitzvahs, strengthen our avodas Hashem. We're living in a world that is now post-MERON. 45 Kedoshim, holy people. If you'll hear some of the things that were said about them, Hashem knew exactly who was taking the cream of the crop, tzaddikim, each one in their own way, from the youngest child to the oldest Zaidi who passed away. You hear about their kedusha, about their commitment to mitzvahs, about their love of Torah, their love of davening, their emunah, the way that they lived. Their midas bein adam lechaver, they treated another person with such honor and such respect. Children who inspired their fathers to become greater in their own avodas Hashem. Siblings who were always on the lookout and watch out for their other siblings to make sure that they were coming along in the right way. Fathers who loved their wives and their children and everybody around them. When 45 Kedoshim like this leave the world, there is a gigantic void. That's 45 less neshamas that are serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. 45 less shacharis every morning. 45 less tefillins every day. 45 less tzedakah acts every day. 45 less chasadim. 45 less midos tayvos, character traits. 45 less hours and hours and hours of learning Torah that doesn't exist in the world anymore. When there's such a void that has been created, the best thing in the world that we can try to do is to fill up the vacuum, to increase our mitzvahs, our Torah, our tefillah, our davening, to push away the darkness that is enshrouding our nation right now, to cast away the gloominess of the unknown and the uncertainty that so many people are grappling with. For if a person will dig inside of themselves to know HaKadosh Baruch Hashem said, nobody can see my panemius, nobody can see inside of me. The only person that you can see inside of is yourself. And perhaps we don't look inside of ourselves enough. Perhaps we're not honest enough with what we are struggling with and what we are dealing with on the inside. Perhaps we're not courageous enough to make decisions that are going to be for the betterment of ourselves, the betterment of our marriages, the betterment of our chinuch habanim, the betterment of our kehilas. Maybe we are too afraid to do what is right in the eyes of Hashem. Maybe coronavirus has hit and left the casualties in the aftermath of things that we were so careful with for decades of our life. We became very lazy about. Certain things that we said, no, I'll never do that. Suddenly, no big deal anymore. Areas of commitment have been waning over the last year. The only one that knows what is going on is the person themselves, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to take a good hard look at ourselves and figure out, what could you do? What could I do to fill the void in myself, which will fill the void in Klal Yisrael? I think about 6 or 7 years ago, one of the tragedies that the Jewish people faced was the Sasson family in New York. Now, Gabriel Sasson and his family, they lived a beautiful 8 children in, I think, Flatbush. And one Shabbos, he had to go away for some kind of convention on Shabbos, and he was in a neighboring city. And he left his wife and his 8 children on Friday afternoon, blessed them, kissed them, loved them, told them, I'll see you after Shabbos. And on Friday night, a fire broke out in that house, and the flames engulfed the house very quickly. And 7 of the children were engulfed by the flames, and they were burned to death, Rahman al-Islam. The mother and one of the daughters were able to jump out of a 2nd-story window. They were burned, maybe broken bones. They were in serious condition, but they were saved. Hatzolah came to Reb Gavriel where he was in the other part of town, and they told him, you must come home. There's been a tragedy. And he came home to see his house burned down to the ground, his wife and his daughter in the hospital in serious condition, and 7 korbanos, 7 of his children sacrificed in the fire. Anybody who remembers that levaya, that funeral, and heard the words of Amunah that were coursing through this man's veins, how he spoke about his children, how he spoke about his family, how he made a charge to every other father and mother that was there in the world, how to take care of our children. The Amunah was not shaykh, was out of this world. A friend of mine who's very close to him went to pay a shiva call. And at the shiva house, which is always uncomfortable, nobody ever really knows what to say at a shiva house. And the rule of thumb is that if you have nothing to say at a shiva house, you're better off not saying anything at all. Because usually when a person decides to offer their interpretations or their insights into death or the life of that person, very often they will end up saying the wrong thing. I was once at a shiva house in Baltimore, and a 9-year-old girl had passed away from cancer. And the father also was a pillar of amunah, of faith. He just believed in everything, and he was not upset or angry with Hashem. And he was busy telling people the greatness of his daughter, the greatness of how much she was able to be mechazik other people to do tshuva. And then there was a lull in the conversation. And the room was packed, and nobody knew what to say. It's okay to be quiet. So one of the people over there says, because the girl's name was Odelia, which means Oidel Hashem, I give thanks to Hashem. So the man asked, how did you decide to name your daughter Odelia? A long pause from the father. And the father looks up and he says, he and his wife are Persian. He said, when we came from Iran, we had nothing. We traveled by camelback, by pickup truck, through the deserts, risked our life to escape from there. We came to America. We didn't have our families with us. We had no money. We had nothing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought my wife and I together. We got married. We're so happy. But we're all by ourselves. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a child. And he gave us this beautiful little girl. And so we called her Odelia, Oidel Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, for everything that you do for us. So at this shiva house of Rav Gavriel Sassoon, a guy is sitting there, and he says, Gavriel, you know, I really want to do something in the memory of your children. Tell me, what mitzvah could I do that's going to be a schus? It'll be a merit for your children's neshamas. So Gavriel looks at this man and he says, I should tell you what to do. I know what you're struggling with on the inside. You're the only person who knows what your spiritual struggles in this world are. You want to do something that's meritorious for my children? Figure out something that's a merit for yourself. That'll be a merit for my children. When you go to a shiva house, the goal is to bring nachama, to bring consolation and comfort to the person who is mourning. There are hundreds of people that are mourning right now in Klal Yisrael. But the tata of them all is the Ribono Shel Olam. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu handpicked these 45 precious neshamas, and they're no longer in this world. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Imai anoichi batzara, I am together with you in your pain and your distress and your mourning, says Hashem. The one that is mourning the most is the Ribono Shel Olam. Our job is to bring nechama, to bring comfort and consolation to Hashem. How can we do that? If we will look inside of ourselves at this time, and we will be honest with our deficiencies and our faults, and we will hone in on a particular area where we have gotten weak, and perhaps weaker than we would like to be. and we make a commitment to strengthen ourselves in that particular part of our avodas Hashem. Whether it is in learning, whether it is in midos, whether it's in davening, whether it is in tzedakah, whether it is in chesed, whatever area of one's life a person knows for themselves, it's time to work on that. Then we will fill up the void that is inside of ourselves, and we will begin to fill the void that has just been created in Klal Yisrael because of the loss of these 45 Heilige Neshamas. And then we will be able to give the ultimate nechama, the ultimate comfort and consolation to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that although we cannot understand your ways, Hashem, and although we cannot see why you do the things that you do, and as long as we are members of this world, we accept that we will never understand why you have done what you have done. And we won't even waste our time trying to figure it out. But rather we will take our energies and we will apply it to ourselves, because we recognize and we realize, Hashem, everything you do is amku machshavaisecha, so deep and so planned out, but you're calling out to us. And the cry that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is whispering in the ears of every single Jew is, fill the void, make yourself greater, take something upon yourself, grab on. The sparks of these neshamas are still in the world. If there's something that impressed you about one of them that you heard about, something that a father said in Levaya for his child, something a child said for his father, or a mother said for her son, if there's some spark of Kedusha that emanates or that resonates with you, grab onto it and decide that you're going to live your life in a different way starting today, not starting tomorrow. We'll turn off the screen. We'll go back to our lives. Not starting tomorrow, starting tonight. A person has to decide what it is that they want to do to fill the void that is within and the vacuum that has been created in Klal Yisrael. I want to share with you a letter that was written by the mother of this young boy, Ezriel Yitzchak Koltai, whose father I know for many years. Here's a woman, her and her husband, the husband, and maybe she is also the husband, is an LA boy. He went to learn in Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. He got married, he settled down in Passaic, and he was a pillar of the community over there in Passaic. And about 7 years ago, they decided, you know what, let's get out of America. Let's go to where we want to be. Let's go to Eretz Yisrael and raise our children there. Let's give them a life of Kedusha, of TORAH, of the beauty and the grandeur of Torah. And who could have dreamed 7 years ago, when they moved there for all the right reasons, that 7 years later, out of 100,000 people in MERON, their 13-year-old son, if you see his picture, such a beautiful boy, sweet, pure, beautiful. Who could have imagined that their son would be one of the victims in this tragedy? She sent out a letter to the public. It's a very emotional letter. It is very poetically and beautifully written. And it bespeaks the glory of the Amunah, of the faith of our great people of Klal Yisrael. That as his mother is sitting shiva for her son, and she knows that there are hundreds of other people that are sitting shiva for their loved ones, she takes pen to paper and she writes this beautiful idea. In heaven, a great fire is roaring. Angels sway and sages hold hands and dance. Omar Rabbi Akiva, Omar Rabbi Akiva, singing this beautiful song. Where's the king of the night? The great sage Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He leaves the circle. He's shaking. He's shuddering. At the entrance of heaven is a clamor. Neshamas start to fly inside. A yeshiva bacher, a singer from Muncie, a chassan, a groom, two little brothers, a young father, another young father, a grandfather, a 14-year-old boy and his 9-year-old brother. The fire sputters, the song dies, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai rushes over and he embraces each and every one of these neshamas. They're blinking in the light. They look at one another. They're disoriented, confused, bewildered. But they are filled with immeasurable light. Come with me, says Rabbi Shimon. Us, they ask. Yes, you. Yerushalmi, Litvak, grandfather, Skver Chassid, Ger Chassid, Mizrahi, Sephardi, yes, all of you come with me, says Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And they follow him. And they're looking down beyond the haze, beyond the clouds, where there's a huge crowd that is stranded on the bleeding mountain down there in MERON. And suddenly the 9-year-old boy looks at Rabbi Shimon and he says, why us? But they know. Each one of them knows they have accomplished their goals. They feel light, whole, and they can see the completion of their tafkidim, of their mission here in this world. Slowly the fire begins to light again. And they take hands again. And now the Chavetz Chaim and the Berditchever Rebbe and Avram Avinu and David HaMelech and Avram Daniel Amban and Moshe Bergman and Yonasan Chavroini and Yedidya Chiyus and Eliyahu Koyen and Yossi Koyen and Simcha Bunim Diskin and Chaim Doron and Moshe Mordechai and Yosef David Elchad Sharf, Yoshua and Moshe Nathan Englander, Mordechai Yoel Feketa, Yedidya Asher Fogel, Elazar Gefner, Shraga Gestetner, Daniel Morris, Eliezer Mordechai Goldberg, Yosef Greenbaum, Eliezer Tzvi Yosef, Nachman Kirschbaum, Shmuel Tzvi Klagsbald, Menachem Nobelwitz, Eliezer Yitzchak Koltai, David Krau, Shlomo Zalman Leibowitz, Yosef Yehuda Levi, Yishai Meulam, Moshe Levi and Yosef Mastorov, Shimon Mation, Elkanah Shila, Chanoich Soila, Dov Steinmetz, Yaakov Elchanan Shakavsky, Yosef Amram Tauber, Ariel Tzadik, Moshe Tzarfati, and Menachem Asher Zekbach. All 45 of these holy neshamas are clasping hands, dancing around together with the sages of all of history. Light, unity, and joy. And even as they dance, these newly arrived neshamas, as they rise to greater and greater heights, they see all the way down to those who don't understand, those who are pained, who stumble, who don't know why or what, those who still keep themselves from their brothers, and those who stray. Omar Rabbi Akiva, they keep dancing. But slowly that song comes to a halt. And another melody replaces the song that they are singing. A song that is only 10 years old, composed by one of the nifter over here, Gestetner. And they hear this song. Chamoil, chamoil, chamoil. Alawa Melecha. Have mercy, Hashem, on your nation. Rachem, 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 al nachalosecha. Have compassion on your nachla, on your inheritance. Chisana karoiv rachamecha. Please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please bring close your mercy and your compassion on Klal Yisrael. We all have goodness, gladness, and light. But those neshamas up there are singing this song. But you have mercy down below on your children. Chaneinu v'aneinu. Please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, answer our tefillos. And she signs Kol Tuv with all goodness. Su Kol Tai. This is the mother of this 13-year-old boy. Up there in Shemayim, these 45 Kedoshim, they have no questions. They have no doubts. They are completely comfortable and confident as they bask in the light and the glory of the Shekhinah. It's those of us that are down here, we will not know. But one thing we can know, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is asking us to do something. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is asking us, fill the pain and the void that is in this world. Fill the empty Batei Midrashim. Fill the Shachris minyan. Fill your tefillin b'kavana. Fill your midos tovos, your beautiful character traits. Fill your learning of Torah. Fill it up in this world. And if a person does that, then they're offering the greatest nechama, the greatest comfort and consolation to Hashem. Our wish, our hope, our prayer is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should comfort all of these families. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring refuah. He should bring healing to those that are still in the hospital fighting for their lives in serious condition. And those that are getting better should continue to have a complete recovery. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should send a nechama to the Jewish people in large. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help to heal our pain, should help to end the tragedies of our nation. He should allow us to be strong and courageous in these circumstances of time, to look inside. It takes courage to look inside of oneself and to realize what I have to work on, what I need to improve in, what I have to elevate myself to do to become a better person, a better Jew in the eyes of Hashem. And if, in fact, together as a nation, as one, we will unite in this cause of becoming the best person, the best nation, the best Klal Yisrael that we could be, then Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach Shemo, we will know no more suffering and no more tragedy. But rather, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will fulfill all of the nevuos, the prophecies, that says that the ultimate reunion is coming between Klal Yisrael and the Shekhinah, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring the Geula Shleima with Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mheira v'yameinu.